Today I wish to challenge us to pray as Elijah did. What Elijah did was biblical, and so therefore we can follow in his footsteps. So let's look at the story. In 1 Corinthians 17, Elijah comes on the scene for the first time, and he approaches Ahab, and he says, Ahab, as Jehovah, the God of Israel, lives, there shall be no dew nor rain these years, except at the command of my word. So this is Elijah's prayer. He issues a command. He says, there will be no rain. And at the word of Elijah, there was no rain. And this is exactly how he prayed. So let's take a look at what the Apostle James has to say about this. Elijah was a human being like us, and he prayed earnestly that it would not rain. And there was no rain on the land for 3 years and 6 months. So sometimes when we pray, we ask God to do something. But there are certain circumstances where God has given us the authority. And in that situation, we have to command something to happen. You can imagine a police officer running around the city asking the mayor to go do something, right? No, the policeman has to be doing something. The policeman says, stop burglarizing, stop, doing this, or stop speeding, or stop doing something else, right? The policeman is given authority to give commands, to issue commands. So sometimes we as Christians, God has given us authority, but we're not using it. We need to learn to use our authority as Elijah did. Going back to verse 16 and 15, we give an example of when we might be using our God-given authority. The prayer of faith will save the one who is sick, right? Sometimes we might pray, oh God, please do something, but that's not the only prayer we can do. We can also do the commanding prayer. For example, a week and a half ago, I was praying for a young lady with another prayer helper of mine, and I told the pain to go. She had pain in her shoulder, and she was having trouble with the mobility, and I talked to the problem. I said, problem, you're now going to go. I asked her to try it out. She said, well, I'm 50% better. And I asked my prayer partner to finish off the job, quite literally. And my prayer partner prayed, and I asked the young lady to try it again, and she swung her arm around like this and said, the problem is now gone. See, sometimes we need to pray like Elijah did, right? We cannot be timid, right? We have to be praying and commanding with the authority that God has given us. So that's not the end of the story. In verse 18, then he prayed again. The sky gave rain, and the land sprouted with a harvest. So let's go take a look at what happened there. So we're going to move on back to 1 Corinthians 18. Elijah told Ahab, go on up and eat and drink, for the sound of a heavy rainstorm can be heard. Now what is interesting about this is that 1, there was no rainstorm. 2, it wasn't heavy. 3, there was no sound. And 4, you couldn't hear it because it wasn't there at all. But Elijah is speaking in faith. He is speaking as though something has manifested, even though it has not. He has seen it in his spirit. He is speaking of things that he has seen in his spirit, and therefore he is declaring it as it is. So we declare the things that are not as though they are, and this is exactly what Elijah was doing. So Ahab, in faith, right, at the sound of the prophet, at the word of the prophet, went up to eat and drink, and Elijah climbed up to Mount Carmel. He told his colleague, his servant, go up and look in the direction of the sea. So he went up and looked and reported, there is nothing. 6 times, Elijah says, go up there and see what happened. I just prayed, commanded that there would be rain, in the sense that I hear rain. He says, there is the sound of rain, even though there isn't any. And he told his servant to go out and look and see in the direction of the sea if you could see something. 6 times the servant said, there is nothing. But Elijah was not a wimp. Elijah was a man of faith, and he prayed in faith, and he commanded in faith. And he says, nope, there is something coming. Go up there one more time. On the 7th time, the servant comes back. Oh, there's a little tiny thing I see. We need to be expecting. When we command, when we pray, we need to be expecting for things to happen. And when that little tiny thing happens, we need to know that our prayer is on its way, and our commanding is on its way to being fulfilled. So the important thing here is that Elijah was working under the authority that God gave. We can't just go run around commanding things. That doesn't work. We have to make sure that when we are commanding things, that we're doing it under the authority of God.